Hey folks, here we are at Sacred Circle Homestead, and today we're going to be collecting rose hips. Now these aren't your typical rose hips, these are an invasive species called Multiflora Rose. And as you can see, they're kind of thicket forming shrubs with very, very dangerous sharp thorns. I've already been pricked a couple of times today. So it's a good idea to have some gloves, or at least some pruning shears, so you can clip them. Now these things are a really good wintertime nutrition. They are loaded with vitamin C, well actually a lot of other vitamins, but vitamin C being the most prevalent, loaded with antioxidants, and they're really good to make into a nourishing wintertime tea. As you can see, I'm getting a little caught here, hence the pruning shears. These things are invasive because each one of these little hips has a few seeds in them. So these will all fall in the spring, and then they'll form bigger thickets and bigger thickets, which is, you know, what humans don't like, but animals like birds and rabbits, they really love it. They make a lot of little nests underneath, especially sometimes. This isn't a good example, but they'll form really large thickets and they kind of arch over banks. And it's kind of like a little haven for rabbits especially. We've seen a lot of those. So we're going to harvest some here and we'll make a tea later on. But we want to be sure to leave some for our wildlife friends because they really need nutrition too. We've got a lot easier than they do. So we'll make sure to leave a good amount for them. Another thing we want to point out while we're here is, if you can see all these red berries on this kind of tall shrub here, these are yet another invasive species called Japanese barberry. And I'll grab a couple for you to see. These also have some pretty gnarly thorns, but they're pretty easy to grab right off. These things are super tasty. I like them better than the Multiflora Rose, which both of these you can eat raw, by the way. You don't have to process them into a tea, you don't have to cook them or anything. The only thing you want to be careful with these rose hips are they'll have little, you might be able to see it in the camera, maybe not. You can see little hairs surrounding the seeds, so they kind of protect the seeds a little bit. But those can be a little bit of a pain when you eat them raw. That's why we like to steep them into a tea. They taste really, really good raw. But as I just mentioned, I like these barberries a little bit better raw. They're kind of sour, almost like candy, but they also kind of taste like a goji berry when you get the ones you get from the health food store. And these you can make into a jam. You can eat them raw, you can make them into a sauce. What we'll be doing this Thanksgiving season, you know, the seasons of giving thanks, we'll be making barberry sauce instead of cranberry sauce. So we can also, which you can also make out of high bush cranberries, low bush cranberries, whatever kind of cranberries you want. These are just what we happen to have at hand because they're right out back. So these are some of the thickets that we were mentioning earlier. As you can see, they're kind of growing. I mean, this thing is massive, and there's all sorts of little footprints other than ours here. There's deer, there's rabbit, there's some squirrel and some chipmunk. Probably other things that I can't identify, but maybe any tracker could. And these things, as you can tell, they were used primarily, I believe they were brought over for the purposes of beauty, but also for the purposes of a living wall, a living fence, if you will, between pastures, between other properties. Because once you plant a couple of them right next to each other, they spread rampantly, and they're virtually impenetrable. I mean, you wouldn't be able to make it through that even if you had a Kevlar suit on of armor, or maybe even chainmail or something. It'd be pretty tough to get through there without some kind of cutting action. And this particular bush must be living pretty vigorously. It's absolutely full of hips and berries. And I'm getting caught. So it makes a good home for anything wanting to escape predators. We just wanted to give that a little bit of a mention to show you kind of the growing habits of these invasive but really magnificent bushes. Here's the lovely rosehip tea that we made. It doesn't look like much, but all you gotta do is put some rosehips in a cup and pour over some boiling water, and it'll do wonders for your nutrition. Thanks for watching.